In this podcast, two Gen Xers are taking a trip down memory lane, revisiting and reflecting on the cinema of the 1980s. We'll look at the hits and the flops, the studio blockbusters and art house indies, the critically acclaimed, and the universally reviled. The series is hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli, a writer and librarian, and features Dustin Morrow, a filmmaker, author, and professor of film. So pull on your legwarmers, crank up your boombox, and hop in the DeLorean. It's time for the Long Rewind. Welcome to the Long Rewind. I'm your host, Lisa, and with me as always is Dustin.
Hey.
And we're here to discuss the films of the second half of 1987. It's a big one, guys.
Yeah, lots of stone cold classics in the back half of 87.
Yeah. Well, should we get to it?
Yeah, let's talk about the key films. Did you kind of categorize yours in any way, or did you just...
I didn't, and you're really great at categorizing them, so why don't you go for it if you have
I kind
some
of broke
categories.
them into a couple of big prestige picks, and then I went kind of hits and bombs, and then I did a small list of stuff that really exploded on cable and VHS.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot this year. You see a lot of that.
I mean, it's interesting that's sort of like, I mean, that was a big thing in the 80s, and I suppose in the 90s as well, but when streaming came in, it kind of like...
Yeah.
You don't hear that much about movies that like tanked in the theaters and then somehow became
Find a second
absolutely
life.
Cultural milestones
Touchstones,
because
yeah,
of their success on streaming. It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be a thing.
Not in that way, no. Not
I mean,
that
I'm
I
sure
can tell.
that you can tell by looking at like the top 10 on Netflix. Occasionally you'll see like some old movie that like from like 4 years earlier that like was on no one's radar will be there. And I think it's like, people are just like, oh, I've never heard of this, or, but it seemed different in the 80s.
Well, maybe because of the serendipity effect, like, and what I mean by that is you would just come across things on, you turn on the TV and you'd be like, oh, what's this?
It's sort of the same idea when you're streaming.
I guess that's true, but it's not already on to catch your eye.
Yeah.
The thumbnail has to catch your eye, or the name has to catch your eye. It's not just
well,
that
as
it's
with
on.
anything in this era, it also just, it took a little more effort because you had to rent
Oh, yeah.
the video. Like there was a little more intentionality there.
That's true.
Like clicking on something if you find something in streaming and you're like, oh, I've never heard of this, and you click on it to give it a try, you might give it like 5 or 10 minutes, if that. But if you plop down $2 and take
you went
it
all
home,
the way there and you brought
it's
it
the only
home.
movie you have because it's the only movie you brought home, and there's nothing on TV that night, you're probably going to try to ride it out.
Yeah, that's probably true.
At least for a while, like before taking it out of. So yeah, I don't know. And HBO just ran. There were a lot of movies that HBO just ran over and over and over again, because they got big ratings every time they ran them. The famous one is The Beastmaster, right? Hey, Beastmaster's on HBO.
Yeah.
But there were others too. There were a ton of them, and there's a whole. Somebody should write a book. Maybe I'll write it about the HBO movie, right? Like the movie that was discovered through HBO's redundancy of
I mean, a lot of people in our generation, that was for sure a
yeah.
thing.
So there were definitely some of those in this period. So I just got a couple prestige picks, but they were important, so I'll just mention them quickly.
Yeah.
The Last Emperor, which won a ton of Oscars, I think. It's a Bernardo Bertolucci film. I don't know anybody who...
I haven't seen it, I have to admit. I've certainly heard of it.
I saw it when during the time. It was...
Do you know what it's about?
I thought it was dull.
I
don't even remember, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a historical, Chinese history movie.
Yeah.
Hope and Glory, which I do know, that's John Borman's
Oh.
autobiographical movie about his childhood during the Blitz.
Yeah, wow.
And it's a very good movie. John Borman's a great, risk it all, lay it all out there filmmaker, and that's a lovely film.
Well,
about
childhood
his
during the Blitz. I mean, that would be
childhood,
a very interesting, affecting thing to
absolutely worth seeing.
Yeah.
Especially if you like Borman. And then, I'll skip the hits for now because there were a bunch of them. Let's just go straight to the bombs.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know how big a bomb this was, but The Living Daylights came out, and I think it did not make the splash that the producers Broccoli's hoped it would. It was Timothy Dalton's first outing as Bond.
Yep.
And I think it did okay, but, he only ended up doing one more.
Yeah.
And it was a weird period for Bond. And we'll do an episode just on Bond in the 80s where we can say more about it. I actually like it. I think it's a pretty good Bond movie.
I mean, I do too. Yeah.
But it just didn't make, Dalton did not become Moore or Connery, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like him. I mean, well, and to be fair, this was the first Bond movie I can remember seeing, and I saw it at a drive-in. My parents went to the drive-in to see it, and they brought us in our pajamas. So I don't know that I was paying a super lot of attention, but I remember it. He's the person I remember being James Bond because he was the first one that I saw.
Yep. Yeah.
So
everybody has mine was
affection,
more.
yeah.
I think everybody has an affection for their first James Bond.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's that.
Yeah.
And there I have a rewindable moment from it that I'll mention later.
Great.
But yeah.
Who's That Girl, which is a Madonna-led comedy.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of effort in this era to make Madonna a movie star.
Yeah.
And it just never, she did okay. It just never quite.
So surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
So surprising.
I mean,
considering her charisma.
Desperately Seeking Susan was not a huge hit, but it was well regarded.
Yeah.
Just rightfully so. It's a great movie.
It is a great movie.
But then she made a number of pretty bad. She did this. She did Shanghai Surprise with Sean Penn, who was her husband at the time.
I've heard
she made
really
some bad stuff.
She was in Dick Tracy. I don't know when that was.
Yeah. Dick Tracy was 90.
Oh, that was 90. Okay.
Yeah. She was dating Warren Beatty at the time. Yeah. That was around the time of Truth or Dare to her documentary.
Oh, yeah.
So seemed like a lot of effort on Hollywood's part to make her into some kind of movie star. And it just seemed like they never quite figured out what to do with her.
It's weird that she didn't.
And Who's That Girl is, it's a pretty bad movie. It's like a screwball comedy. I think it's Griffin Dunn, I think is the male lead. Did we try
to watch it and it wasn't, we just couldn't?
I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's not good.
No.
And then Superman 4 and Masters of the Universe came out in this period. And I alluded to this in the last episode when we were talking about Over the Top. But this is where Canon Films, this is sort of like the beginning of the end for Canon Films, because this is when they really thought they could compete with the major studios. And so they made efforts to acquire big movie stars and valuable intellectual property.
Both of which cost a lot of money. Which is not
both of which cost a ton of
out.
cash. So that meant buying Superman, the rights to Superman, and hiring Christopher Reeve, who really didn't want to make this movie. And so they really had to pay him, not only pay him big, but also give him a whole nother movie, which we talked about in last week's episode too, it's a movie called Street Smart. It's actually a really good movie. And the intellectual property known as Masters of the Universe, which is He-Man, which is owned by Mattel. So, of course, the famous cartoon from the 80s,
Huge in the 80s.
Post-school cartoon. I used to watch it. I was really into He-Man. I loved He-Man as a kid. I was so excited for this movie. Both of these movies, although I would argue have their charms, were considered to be not good. They were panned, and both absolutely crashed at the box office, and Canon spent a ton of money on them, and Canon made its bread and butter by funding very low budget films that would have sort of medium level returns in terms of their box office performance. But because they spent so little on them,
it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. They just needed to be profitable. And
they basically lost sight of their business
model. And so when they started
Yeah.
spending like $20 million and up on a movie, it was just not the right business model for them. And they also bought studio space in England. And they bought, they invested in actual brick and mortar movie theaters, like a chain of those in England, I think. And those ended up not being wise investments either. And it wasn't long before Canon kind of dissolved.
Kind of imploded.
Yeah, they didn't last much longer than this. That trilogy of movies, Over the Top, Superman 4, and Masters of the Universe, are kind of like the death knell for Canon.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk about the big hits. Dirty Dancing, of course.
Yep.
Which is, do we actually say it? Lisa's favorite movie?
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, I have a lot of favorites hard, right? But it's definitely one of my favorites of all time.
Top 5?
Oh, yeah. No question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to say
I
anything?
didn't know if you wanted me to
Do you
talk
want to
about
say
it.
anything about it? Why do you love
It's
it?
the best movie ever.
Because it's just such a classic girl movie, and you were a girl
yeah,
at that time? Or
it was,
is there more to it than that?
Probably not. I mean, what do you say about Dirty Dancing? There's dancing. You can identify with the main
that dancing
female.
is dirty.
It is. At least it felt that way at the time. I mean, Patrick Swayze is amazing. And I think you might even say that as a guy, you know.
He's incredible. The movie doesn't work without him. He's that good.
Yeah, I mean, his charisma, his dancing, obviously. I think even his acting's quite good.
Yeah.
The music's amazing.
Yeah. I had the soundtrack.
Yeah, I had both. There's a part 1 and part 2 of the soundtrack. I had both. We won't go into it, but I lost one in a tragic accident and was very upset.
Yeah. It's like childhood trauma.
Yeah,
because I've heard this story a few times. That it was a tape called More Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, More Dirty Dancing.
It was like the sequel soundtrack.
I preferred it, and
her cousin destroyed it somehow.
And I still hold a grudge. Anyway, it's the dancing, it's the acting. I think you can really, at least as a young girl, you really identify with Baby, the main female character in the movie. You heavily identify with her, and it just makes everything great. And as you get older, I mean, all the actors are fantastic. The set, not the set design, but like the costumes and everything, it really puts you in the early 60s in this, upstate New York resort of the time. I think it captured it to me. I mean, I obviously wasn't around at that time, but it feels like it really captures the mood and, what that would have been like to be there. And of course, Patrick Swayze's guy from the other side of the tracks, very appealing. It's just all the dancing. It's just great. I mean,
I had the
what's bad
soundtrack
about it? Yeah.
When I was young. I don't know why, but
it was very big. I mean, it was popular
huge.
soundtrack.
Yeah, it was huge. I was actually pretty dismissive of the movie when I was young.
I'm sure you were. Most boys probably were.
It just seemed like such a girly movie. I remember seeing it, but like being like, oh, I don't know if that's for me. But then seeing it as an adult, like much later, and being like, oh, this is actually really good for all the reasons you said, and also because I think it has one of my favorite kind of movie narratives that was big in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I mean, my favorite movie, Romancing the Stone, has this narrative too, which is it has a central character who's kind of mousy and kind of gets stepped on a lot. And through whatever events unfold in the movie, finds her confidence and learns to kind of assert herself and happens to find love in the process, which is wonderful in kind of a romantic movies sort of way.
Well, she also, I mean, this is maybe a weird thing to say, but she kind of embraces her womanhood. She's kind of like a little girl, and then she kind of turns into a woman. Mm-hmm. It's so good. Yeah. Y'all, it's so good.
Okay. Other kind of huge movies from the time. Dirty Dancing actually, I think, only made like $40 million.
Wow.
It wasn't as big a hit as its reputation would make you think. I might be wrong about that. Maybe you could look it up.
Maybe a lot of the girls who could have gone to see it, like I didn't have money to go to the movies. I wasn't old enough to go out and see movies on.
Yeah, I mean, everybody saw it. It was a huge deal. I mean, the music videos, the soundtrack was huge. Yeah. I mean, all of the contemporary songs were released as singles, and it seemed like they were all hits.
And even most of its songs from that period of the 60s, right? And even those, I think, became big again. I mean, there was a whole traveling show, like dance show that came out of it.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, like people would go to see this Dirty Dancing stage show that had all the music. So it was really big. Yeah.
Yeah. Its cultural reach seemed bigger than its actual success would maybe.
Maybe it did better in rentals later.
Oh, I'm sure it did. I think
VHS,
it was. I'm sure it was just absolutely massive.
I mean, frankly, that's
VHS.
how I saw it was on VHS. So Yeah.
Did the boys in your class say, not to be a 12-year-old, but I remember when we were kids, we would instead of "She's Like the Wind."
Oh,
that was the Swayze song, right?
yes.
She's like the wind.
Yeah.
We said something else.
Yeah, I bet you did. I honestly don't remember boys talking about this movie at all. It was just like me and my girlfriends super into it. Okay. I don't remember boys talking about it. Yeah.
Fatal Attraction came out this time, which was a huge movie. It was on the cover of like Time or Newsweek or maybe both of them. It was about a man who commits adultery and pays for it, which is a very 80s Reagan era idea. Like it's sort of like, it was the era that, AIDS was really blowing up, and this idea that like you couldn't have casual sex anymore, that to do so you were going to pay for it in some way. And Fatal Attraction kind of felt like the climax of that in some ways, that idea, and just kind of built through the 80s.
I mean, there's also a watch out for crazy women kind of.
And it's also just it's just like a yuppie, yuppie classic. Michael Douglas was kind of like the poster child for sort of like the privileged, entitled white male yuppie in that era. Like Wall Street and Fatal Attraction came out almost back to back.
That's wild.
And and so he really kind of came to symbolize that character as an actor. Yeah. I think in all the discussion over it, what sometimes gets overlooked about it is that it's actually just a really good movie.
You mean just like as a thriller?
Yeah, just a great thriller, really well directed. The acting is phenomenal.
Yeah. That's all true.
Yeah. There's a famous story about the ending being reshot. Have you heard about that?
I don't remember it, but I remember you telling me.
Yeah, in the original script, she commits suicide and frames his character, and so he ends up going to jail after she dies. And apparently the test audiences absolutely hated this. She was so good at playing this villain that they wanted her to pay.
Right, they wanted the
villain in some
to pay.
way. Yeah. And I don't think it was necessarily that they were dying for him to get away.
It was just that
be like forgiven for what he did, but she was just so effective as this psychotic villain that they really wanted to see her suffer in some way. And so the new ending, of course, is, if you've seen the movie, is that she's
spoiler.
Yeah, that she's that the wife ends up, the Anne Archer character ends up doing her in.
More cathartic, I suppose.
My sister probably won't love me telling the story on a podcast, but this is the movie. I remember watching this when I was young, and my sister Casey watching it with me and starting to cry during the ending because it was so scary.
It's very scary. Even as an adult, I think it's pretty scary.
That showdown that they reshot is so good that, even if you want to make an argument that the original ending was better, that reshot ending is some of the most effective suspense
100%
filmmaking, in that era.
Even now, I think I'm sure that's true.
Yeah. Other big movies, No Way Out, which is a kind of a conspiracy spy thriller with Kevin Costner, who had really just blown up out of The Untouchables, which came out earlier in 87. This was a big year for Costner. Bull Durham was around the corner. So he was really kind of cementing his place as like the Gary Cooper of his generation. And No Way Out is a movie that kind of subverts that and plays with it in kind of an interesting way. It's got an incredible twist ending, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen the movie, but it's him and Gene Hackman and Sean Young. It's a good thriller. 3 Men and a Baby was a big hit from this era.
Oh, yeah.
Selleck, Danson, and Gutenberg.
Yep.
I don't know what to say about it. It's pretty bad.
I don't know what to say about it either.
I haven't seen it lately, but I did see it like maybe 10 years ago. And I remember thinking like, this isn't good. Like what were people...
Yeah.
What did people like about this?
I think I probably saw it once a very, very long time ago. I don't remember anything about it.
Do you remember the Ben Stiller show?
Yeah.
The actual like his short-lived variety show where
Oh,
he would
yeah,
do
I loved
sketches and
it.
stuff.
I used to love that show. Yeah.
He did one. It was 3 men and an old man.
I don't remember that sketch, but I believe it.
It was
yeah.
those 3 actors having to take care of an old man.
Please tell me it was Jerry Stiller.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
No. Yeah, that's pretty
It
great.
might have been Jerry Stiller. I don't remember.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
That's also the movie. Do you remember the story of the ghost
No,
of 3 men and a baby?
I don't. No.
Yeah, it was years later after it had come out, but there started to be this rumor that there was a ghost that you could see in the background of one of the
Weird.
scenes of 3 Men and a Baby.
That's really weird.
Kind of like,
Like
Wizard of
the
Oz
Wizard
has
of Oz,
those
yeah.
that reputation that there's a couple shots in Wizard of Oz where you can supposedly see like somebody who hung themselves in the
yeah.
background. And,
Yeah.
3 and the Baby had that. It's a scene where 2 guys, like I think Danson and one of the other Selleck or somebody are talking, and then you can see like the ghost of a dead boy who died on the set of the movie standing back
A
in the
different
window.
movie or the movie 3 Men and a Baby?
No, it just on that set.
Oh, just
at the studio.
At that studio at some point.
Yeah,
I see.
and he's
Yeah.
standing back there in the window, like
Okay.
looking straight into the camera.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah. So I remember getting the movie because I wanted to see this ghost and putting it in and finding the scene and being like, oh my God, that's that's spooky. Like that's clearly a person standing back there, staring right into the camera. Like this is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
In subsequent iterations of the film on more
Digitalized
HD,
formats,
better resolution, you can clearly see what it is.
And it's
a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson.
What?
In like a top hat and like a tails. It's because his character in the movie is an actor.
Oh.
So I assume it's some like
kind of promotional
thing or something. But they did, I mean, it's weird because he's like cut off at the knees, I think. And
right.
and they've put him behind these curtains in this window, which is a weird thing to do with a cardboard cutout
I
of
wonder
yourself.
why it was even there. What a strange.
I don't know. But in the murky lower generation
Like the
version on
VHS
VHS,
version,
you can't really quite tell who or what it is. And so it does look like there's somebody back there.
Weird.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. It's probably a rumor started by Disney to gin up more rentals. I don't know.
Oh my.
Throw Mama from the Train
Oh yeah.
was a big hit. That was a kind of a comedy remake of Strangers on a Train, the Hitchcock classic.
Okay, yeah.
It's
I guess I never
DeVito
put that together.
and Billy Crystal.
Right.
And it might be the first movie DeVito directed.
Oh.
I think it was. It's a very dark comedy.
Yeah.
And it starred Anne Ramsey
I was gonna say
as the mama. Do you remember her?
Yeah,
She was so 80s.
She's very 80s. Is she the mom from the Goonies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
She had a very
She's
raspy
the mama
voice.
from the Goonies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently always played parts like that.
Yeah.
Through the 80s and like mean older women, but was by all accounts an incredibly sweet person
that's
off
nice.
screen and couldn't have been
Yeah.
less like the parts that she played.
She was a character. I mean, a true character actress.
She was
I
very
guess.
funny, great
Yeah.
comedian. RoboCop came out around this time.
Yep.
Another movie that wasn't a huge hit when it played in theaters, I think, but really has become a cultural
Yeah, it's like a cult
touchstone.
classic,
Obviously,
touchstone
yeah,
kind of
launched
thing.
a cartoon,
Oh yeah.
a television series,
Much merch, I
sequels,
imagine.
a
Yeah.
remake. Yeah, just a massive
Many a Halloween costume, I would
movie.
imagine.
Yeah. So, but hopefully, what doesn't get lost in the this continuing storyline is how good the original movie is,
Yeah.
which is really good.
It actually has quite a lot of heft
yeah,
to
it's
it.
Paul Verhoeven, the sort of like subversive Dutch filmmaker, and it's a real interesting critique of like the media ecosystem of the 80s.
It's actually, there's more to this movie than you think there's going to be. Like I hadn't seen it till I was an adult, and I was surprised at how much there was to it.
Yeah. It's a really smart movie. Yeah. The Princess Bride came out.
Yeah.
I feel like it came out around Christmas. I remember seeing it and going Christmas shopping that day.
Oh, wow. What a
I
Christmassy
remember seeing
day.
it at the mall. Yeah.
What a delightful day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, what can you say about The Princess
Yeah.
Bride? Based on William Goldman's
Yep.
book.
Of the same name. Mm-hmm.
Fred Savage and Peter Falk
In
as
the framing
Grandpa.
device, yeah. And then Carrie Elways and Robin Wright.
It seems to me like it's the most screened movie at like
outdoor
community
family
screenings.
Yeah. People, I mean, probably everyone listening to this, everyone loves this movie. Who
hasn't seen this movie outside in a park
Who
somewhere
can't quote
in their
something
community?
from this movie? Everybody can quote something from this movie. It's huge. It's a delight. You get Billy Crystal and Carol Kane, and it's great.
Yeah.
Andre the Giant.
I love it. I feel like it's as close to like a movie feeling overexposed
It's a little
to me
overexposed.
as a movie
It's unfortunate.
can get. So I often I don't really ever feel inclined to put it on and watch it, and I think maybe it's just because I've been
overplayed.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I've been subjected to it too much or something.
Which is a shame because it really is.
Yeah, because it is a lovely movie. I watched it a million times as a kid. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Broadcast news.
Mm-hmm.
This is James L. Brooks's satire of media in the 80s. Albert Brooks, William Hurt, Holly Hunter.
Yeah.
Very funny, very smart comedy about the television news business.
Yeah.
Moonstruck.
Oh, yeah.
Incredibly charming and romantic comedy. I think Cher won an Oscar for Best Actress.
Yeah, we'll find out later.
Yep. A peculiar performance by Nicolas Cage that
one
somehow
of two this year
somehow
apparently.
works.
Yeah, well, Racing Arizona and Moonstruck.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie.
Yeah, also a movie I didn't love as a kid, but like came to later. Really,
I feel like
really
you appreciate this
enjoy.
movie more as an adult, maybe for whatever reason. I don't know why. But
It's it's like the rare romantic comedy that feels really romantic.
It does. Oh yeah, I love this movie. It's delightful.
Mm-hmm. Good Morning Vietnam, which is the movie that I think made people look twice at, or sort of established Robin Williams as potentially a really good dramatic
having a lot more
actor.
range. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was nominated for this movie, and I think what everybody remembers is his stand-up comedy like runs on the microphone as the DJ Adrian Cronauer.
Yeah.
But it's the stuff in between that's really kind of rich. It's a Barry Levinson movie, the second really good Barry Levinson movie from this year. He made a film called Tin Men.
Oh, yes.
That came out earlier in the year with Dreyfuss and DeVito. Yeah, it's a really good movie. It's a really good movie. It's the Robin Williams show, and he owns it.
Yeah, I've only seen it once, but I remember being excellent.
It's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
His performance is kind of lovely, and some bad stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be why I would find it hard to watch over and over. I remember it being very emotional.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then finally, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
I think it's on the short list for funniest movies ever made.
Yeah.
It makes me cry every time I watch it. No matter how many times I see it, I'm crying like a baby at the end. I loved Candy. He was one of my favorite actors when I was a kid. He's the first celebrity death I remember.
Oh, yeah.
And I took it kind of hard. I remember being really sad that he passed away.
Well, it was a real loss.
I just loved him so much.
Yeah, he was such a talent. It's a real loss. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he was in his early 40s when he died.
Yeah, he was. Maybe. I don't know how old he was. You're probably right. He was awfully young. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were robbed of many
decades
more
probably
great. He was also just starting to do dramatic parts, and he was a really good dramatic actor.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it in scenes in Planes and Trains and Automobiles.
Definitely.
But also he made a movie called Only the Lonely, which is kind of lovely from that era. He was just starting. He had a small dramatic part in JFK, the Oliver Stone movie.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, he was just starting to kind of stretch out and do more stuff. And I think if he had lived,
we probably would have seen some amazing things.
He would have
that's too bad.
He would have done more of that.
Yeah.
Did you have other key movies? I'm kind of hogging the mic, as I always do.
I mean, I always put stuff in key that is not really key. Maybe these are more for the hidden gems kind of situation. Well, I don't know. Is The Lost Boys key? Should we talk about
I think it is. That was sort of that.
Yeah.
I talked at the beginning about the kind of HBO VHS movies. So the ones that I thought were those were The Lost Boys, Hellraiser, The Monster Squad, and Can't Buy Me Love.
I've never seen Hellraiser,
I think
but I
all
love
of
all the
those
other
movies
ones.
were not hugely successful when they came out. The Monster Squad, I know, was just it was a disaster in the box office because we know the filmmaker.
Yes,
And,
our dear friend.
yeah.
Fred
And
Decker,
but all of those movies have become absolute, cultural milestones. I mean, everybody knows those movies. Everybody of every age has seen those movies. And, for us, for Gen X, those are just absolutely iconic
Oh, yeah.
films.
Yeah. I mean, I love The Lost Boys,
Yep.
maybe almost as much as Dirty Dancing. Not
Yeah.
quite as much, but I really love that movie. But I came to it extremely late also. Like, I came to it as an adult, which I know is a little weird.
Which shows you how good it is.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, to me, I think it does.
What do you love about it?
What do I love about it? Sense of place. I think it really, I mean, again, not that I lived in a, Northern Californian shore town, but I feel like it gives you this real interesting sense of place. There's a real mood to it. I love Kiefer in it. I love all the locations. I think it's
Corey Haim's wardrobe.
Corey Haim's wardrobe's amazing and confusing.
The Frog Brothers.
The Frog Brothers. It's very stylish, but also the writing I think is really good. The story's really good. I don't know what else can you say.
Great
about
character actors.
Great
weirdly,
character actors.
Actors that had no business having that good of actors in those parts.
I mean, Diane Wiest. I don't know who plays Grandpa, but he's amazing.
Barnard Hughes.
Barnard
been
Hughes.
around forever. Old character actor.
Edward Herman.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and there's just this astonishing. All the stuff on the pier is so wonderful.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like the first half hour of that movie, it's all that stuff on the pier.
Yeah,
I love
the pier.
Like it's a bummer when the movie kind of moves away from the pier after like the first act.
I mean, I also
that
love
stuff
them.
on the pier is just it's dripping with atmosphere.
Yeah, maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Atmosphere. That movie has some major atmosphere, and I love it. I love it so much.
It also has the best performance ever by an oiled up shirtless saxophone player with a mullet.
Yeah, it's show stopping. It's show stopping. 100%.
Lisa has a sticker of that guy in her office.
I do. Yeah. It's true. I wish I had lots of Lost Boys gear, but I came to it late because I was afraid to watch it as a kid. They would show it at sleepovers, and either I wouldn't go to the sleepover or I would refuse to watch it. I was afraid of these kind of movies.
Yeah, that's fair. It was a vampire movie.
It was, and maybe as a kid I probably would have been too scared, but I love it now.
I mean, there's one scene where where they tear up those punks around the campfire.
Yeah. That would have been way too much for me.
It's pretty visceral, that scene.
That would have been too much for me, I'm sure, at the time. So I love it.
So what about these other three? So neither one of us is going to have anything to say about Hellraiser.
Nope. I've never seen it.
You'll
I don't
never
think I
see
ever
it.
will.
I think the pins in the head of Pinhead.
I can't do it.
You probably can't even look at that,
I can't
right?
look at it. No, I can't.
I've seen it. I didn't really care for it.
I know it has a big reputation.
I can see why people like it.
Yeah.
It's Clive Barker, right? And people love Clive. People who love Clive Barker really love Clive Barker. Yeah. It's not my thing, but I get why people like it. It certainly launched a whole, franchise of movies.
Definitely.
On the other hand, Monster Squad, I love.
Yeah, I love them. Of course, I love
it like a little brother.
Squad. Yeah.
Monster Squad was a movie. I was a little kid and grew up in a place where I didn't have a ton of friends or really any friends that were also because my school was so small. My graduating class was like 40 people. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a ton of friends that were really into like movies and monsters and stuff. And when I saw that movie, I was like, oh, there's other kids out there like me. And that's cool. I don't know. It just
you could relate.
It meant something to me to see it, to see these kids screen. And be like, I know these kids. Like this is
cool.
This is this is my crowd. These are my guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love it. And I love any 80s movie, and there were a bunch where kids were the heroes and movies that didn't talk down to kids and that didn't sanitize themselves because they were quote unquote kids movies.
No. Yeah.
I mean, I think Monster Squad might have been PG-13 even.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
It's got some tough stuff in it, right? Dracula picks up a little girl by her
There's
by
some
her chin
peril,
and calls her a bitch. I mean,
That's true.
It's
Yeah.
intense. Like some of it's really intense.
There's some real peril. Yeah.
You know, there's a kid in it that like stakes his brides in the heart. I mean, it's you know, they blow up the wolf man, like he explodes into pieces. Like there's a lot of stuff in it that you're like, wow, this is a kid's movie. But then on the flip side, they're also kicking the wolf man in the nuts. Excuse me, the nards.
The nards, yeah.
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 Yeah. I just think it's a great movie. I know that Fred Decker loves Spielberg. Spielberg's his favorite filmmaker. And you can feel it in every frame of this movie.
For sure.
This movie is so Spielbergian in all of the best ways.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this movie too.
Such a fun, sweet movie. I'm glad they haven't tried to remake it, although it'll probably happen someday.
Yeah. I mean, it's got, if you like, I know some people have made Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things more than owes a debt to the Monster Squad. Stranger Things, I would argue, doesn't exist without the Monster Squad and the Goonies.
Yep, I think that's right.
What about the last one, Can't Buy Me Love?
I love Can't Buy Me Love.
Yeah, that's Patrick Dempsey rents Amanda Peterson for a month to make himself popular.
But yeah. Well, she's in his debt, right? Because she wears
he rents her. She wrecks her mom's suede jacket,
right?
And he pays for its cleaning
or to buy a new one or something. He pays a lot of money to get her out of a jam.
And in return,
she
agrees to date him for a month.
Yep,
and that makes him popular, and he loses his sense of himself. And it couldn't be cheesier. It's nowhere near. It doesn't have anywhere near the intelligence of any John Hughes script, and yet somehow it's incredibly fun and appealing.
Yeah.
Dempsey is great.
Yeah, he is.
Amanda Peterson, R.I.P., is absolutely lovely in it, and also very good. She's really good in it.
Yeah.
And,
do you think that's why? Is it the appeal of these two main actors that make it what it is?
I think it helps.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of it just feels like a very, for as unseemly as that premise could be on paper.
Yeah.
Just a very feels like a very good intentioned, sweet movie. It has one of the great, if not the greatest, second greatest, I guess, slow claps.
Yeah.
In all of movies, right?
Yeah.
Like Lucas is the only movie that probably has a better slow clap at the end than Can't Buy Me Loves.
Yeah, and it's been homaged, I think, in more recent films as well.
It's been remade even, yeah.
I didn't realize it had been remade, but I'm thinking of Easy A. They do kind of a
Easy A, They
visual
right away
reference
on the lawnmower.
On the lawnmower. So, a lot of people love
it's
and homage
iconic
this film.
for sure.
It is.
I think it tanked in the theaters and found its audience on HBO
I was going to say,
VHS.
Yeah, this is one I actually didn't see till I was older, but I remember hearing a lot of people, like a lot of my friends, talk about because I think they'd just seen it on cable. Yeah. Yep.
A couple other movies that I would consider kind of era defining for the 80s. So again, if that alien that mythical alien we're always talking about landed and you had to show them some movies to represent the 80s, we mentioned Secret of My Success in last week's episode.
Oh, yeah.
But you would also have to mention Wall Street, Oliver Stone's thriller about Wall Street.
How did I not know that was Oliver Stone? That's wild.
Oliver Stone.
Of course.
About Gordon Gekko. It's where the phrase greed is good came from.
The phrase of the 80s. Yeah.
Michael Douglas won the Oscar for it. It's a great movie. It's a really great movie.
It is really great.
Baby Boom.
Yeah, which is like definitely adjacent.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
It's Diane Keaton as they call her the Tiger Lady. She's like a tough Wall Street businesswoman who inherits a baby from a relative or something.
Which I feel like happened in 80s movies. And you were like, that happens.
It's such like an
that
80s
never
sitcom
happens.
thing.
That's not a thing that happens. But we
and it
all
humanizes
accepted it,
her and she ends up moving to like New Hampshire or Maine or someplace and to escapes the rat race.
Yeah.
And it's very much about, women's place in the way that women were reasserting their voice in professional arenas, in the workplace in the 1980s, coming out of, the feminist movement
but there's also that interesting wanting to escape, or maybe, I don't know. I haven't seen this in a long time, so I don't know if she wanted to escape the rat race or was sort of forced to.
No, she's forced to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess she maybe didn't want to go do that, but she did. And then she becomes like a baby food magnate
Yeah, she
or
creates her
something.
own
Yeah.
baby food,
Right.
and then it becomes hugely successful. And then she
I
has
see.
the opportunity to rejoin the rat race, and of course chooses to the simpler life. And
Such an interesting 80s story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's good. Diane Keaton's great in it.
Yeah. Well,
It's
Diane
very
Keaton.
it's very 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Very 80s.
And then the other one I would mention is Less Than Zero,
Yep.
which is based on Bret Easton Ellis's book
Very, very 80s.
about
Indeed.
a bunch of recent college grads in LA doing drugs, having sex, and behaving poorly. It's not a good movie. Bret Easton Ellis will tell you that. It's the book is great. The movie less so, but it's pretty iconic. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it had a Hazy Shade of Winter by the
Oh,
Bangles was the
sure.
song that was on the radio and MTV constantly from that film. And it was, it had Andrew McCarthy, Jamie Gertz, and Robert Downey Jr.,
Yeah.
who's really good in it. Turns out, he should have been really good at playing somebody who
Turns
was
out he
out of
maybe
his
knew a little
mind on
something about
drugs.
it. Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit of a method acting perhaps there.
Yeah. Yeah. Second Jamie Gertz film of at least second Jamie Gertz film.
Just the recent. Yeah, it's not great, but it's so 80s. It's just so
Yeah.
glossy,
I suppose
and
you'd
it's
show
full
this
of
to an alien.
cocaine
Yeah.
and good-looking people and rock music, and it just feels like the 80s.
LA just feels like a really 80s city. I mean, not now probably, but
Yeah.
like that was a big city in the
No,
80s.
for sure.
I don't know what I'm
And
trying
Bret
to say,
Easton
but-
Ellis was a big deal in the
yeah.
80s.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't think we've talked about the sort of that kind of young literary crowd
Oh,
like Jay
definitely,
McInerney and Tama Janowitz, Slaves of New York,
Yeah.
Bright Lights, Big City,
Yep.
which
Yep.
is a movie we'll probably be talking about shortly.
Yep.
I think maybe in the next
Yeah,
episode.
probably. Yeah.
But yeah, they were like kind of super young or like early 20s, all kind of like misbehaving and running around New York in the 80s,
But,
going to
like, super
nightclubs.
cool literary
super
icons.
cool. They were like the
Yeah.
Brat Pack of like the literary scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And Less Than Zero was probably the most famous book to come out of that
Okay. That's interesting.
that scene for
well,
sure.
Oh, really? Because I guess I would think like things like American Psycho or
Well, that came later.
that's okay. We're talking about the
Yeah.
80s, like
Yeah.
centered in the 80s. Yeah. The only thing I've never seen this movie. I know about it. I know the premise and everything. But the only thing I can remember about this movie is that I think they used to show it in health class as it's like a cautionary tale.
Oh my
like
God,
in
really?
my school. Isn't that
like
weird?
an anti-drug
Kind
movie?
of, something like that. Isn't that weird? That's totally
That
weird.
is so weird.
Having not seen it, I don't know if that would be effective or not, or if it would be more like, "Ooh, that's cool." I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, you're exactly right. Like, you're exactly right. That's kind of what it is. It's one of these movies that's like, it's its message is anti-drug, but it makes drugs look like the greatest thing you
right.
could do.
I had a feeling that might be the case based on
Yeah.
its provenance, but
Yeah.
yeah.
A couple more, just real quick. Eddie Murphy Raw
Yeah, that was big.
that was a, not that they don't do that ever anymore, but there were a number of like stand-up comedy concert movies that you would go and
yeah.
see in the theater, and they were mostly Eddie and Richard Pryor.
Yeah, those were huge. I mean, now it's Netflix specials, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like, these movies were big.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
big.
Delirious was Eddie's first one, and Raw was the follow-up.
Yeah.
And Pryor had several, Alive and Smokin', Here and Now,
There's like a
Live on the Sunset Strip.
one. Yeah. mhm.
Yeah, that one's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy Raw, which outfit is that? Because I think of these in terms of the
I
outfits.
think
he
it's
was
like a
wearing.
bluish purple leather.
Yeah.
Delirious is the red one.
The red leather. I mean, these are like iconic. If you were alive in this time,
Yeah.
these are iconic outfits.
Raw
that
is not
you
great,
wore.
but Delirious is hilarious.
Okay, so the red one and the red.
Yeah,
leather
if you
suit.
were only going to see one, I would
See
go to
Delirious.
Delirious. Yeah, that's. I
Okay.
feel like Eddie at the height of his powers as a stand-up.
He's funny.
There were a bunch of like these kind of like adult, semi-erotic legal thrillers in the 80s.
Yeah, that's true.
And there were a couple that came out in the back half of 87. One was called
Okay.
Nuts with Barbara Streisand.
Oh,
and the
really?
other one was called Suspect with Dennis Quaid and Cher. There was one, I think it was maybe a little earlier, maybe a year earlier, called Jagged Edge with
Okay.
Glenn Close and Jeff Bridges.
Of course.
There was one with Jane Fonda called The Morning After. There They were a thing. I don't know why they were a
you
thing.
think these are like
Legal Eagles? That wasn't a thriller, but it was kind of a thriller.
Do you think
It
these
was
are like
Redford
yuppie
and
Wall
Winger.
Street adjacent kind
Yeah,
of things?
I do.
Yeah.
I think that's what they were.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yuppies were big.
And then another trend, like miniature trend from that period, was the body switching trend.
Yeah, there were a couple of those.
Yeah,
this
so
year,
Like Father, Like Son came out in this period, and that really kind of kicked it off. The ones that followed were 18 Again, which was George Burns and Charlie Schlatter. And then there was Vice Versa with Judge Reinhold and Fred Savage. And then Big with Tom Hanks, which wasn't exactly body switching, but close,
Not
right?
between two people, but like one person, I guess, sort of switching body.
But it played on the same joke that
the
all these
same
movies
idea.
did, which were what would happen if you took a kid and put him in an adult body.
Well, tell us who
And
was
then
in...
there was another one, Dream a Little Dream with Corey Feldman and Jason Robards switching places.
I didn't know that's what that was about.
Yeah, well, maybe the reason you don't is because that movie does it so poorly that Feldman, once he becomes Jason Robards, doesn't act any different.
I mean, the little I've seen of that movie, I couldn't make head or tail of it. So,
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Yeah.
And it's a confounding movie.
Well, Like Father, Like Son, isn't that that's Dudley Moore and
Kirk Cameron, which can you imagine those two sharing DNA in any way?
No.
Like they're playing father and son in that movie.
It's not
Dudley
feasible.
Moore
But
as Kirk Cameron's dad on what strange and distant planet did this happen?
Yeah, I don't know, but Kirk Cameron was big at the time, right? I mean, he was huge.
I love Dudley Moore, but it's terrible. It's really terrible.
Sure it is. I haven't seen it.
Vice Versa has a few funny bits in it, but it's also pretty bad. 18 Again is terrible.
They weren't good
Dream
as
Little
far
Dream's
as
awful.
Yeah.
Like Big is the only one.
I mean, that one's great.
Really,
but
worked.
And it's not the same thing. I mean, I haven't seen any of these movies, to be honest.
They didn't invent this. We should clarify that Freaky Friday came out a whole 10 years earlier with Jodie Foster. It was a Disney movie.
I don't know if that was the one that invented it, but it's the one we all think of, I suppose. Yeah.
But it was weird. It was one of those weird periods where Hollywood made a bunch of movies with the exact same premise at the same time, which happens occasionally.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. All right, let's go into Unsung Gems. What were some of your favorite smaller movies or movies that you think might have been forgotten or deserve a little love?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, again, these are some I think you just know better than me. I had The Monster Squad in there because I love it and I think it deserves more love, but we already talked about that one.
I mean, it's beloved now.
It's beloved now.
There was a whole feature film documentary made about it. Yeah.
I have Whitewater Summer, which I think is, I know it's one you love.
Yeah, I had it down in B movies.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Is it good or is it bad?
I mean,
I'm not sure.
You've seen it more than I have.
I like it, but I don't know. I found it as a kid and fell in love with it as a kid. And so I still kind of love it as an adult, but I suspect it's actually not a good movie.
Okay. I don't know. I guess I found Kevin Bacon's character really weird and interesting in this movie. It was very, it threw me off and that made it kind of an interesting movie.
I mean, people are probably going, what's Whitewater Summer?
We need to tell them what
the premise of it is Kevin Bacon plays a wilderness guide who takes groups of young men, like teen boys, into the woods on 6-8 week hiking, camping.
Are they like troubled young guys? No, just guys.
No, just kids.
Just kids.
And Sean Astin is one of the kids that he takes out there, and they butt heads. And Sean Astin is kind of like this wiseacre indoor kid.
As he often played in
who doesn't want to go. Yeah. And he and Bacon butt heads, and you start to realize as the movie goes on that Kevin Bacon might be kind of insane.
Yeah, I found him really unsettling in this movie.
Yeah. And it's not immediate, and it's not in ways, like you can kind of see where he's coming from because the Aston character is kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But he takes it too far, and it's a thriller. It's an interesting movie. It's like it's got like a good 3 or 4 kind of musical montage, scene music by The Cutting Crew and Journey. It's got this great 80s rock soundtrack, and it makes you feel like it feels like a movie that is what it was, which is really reworked in post-production.
Oh, okay.
There's a framing device that that you can tell was shot fully like years later.
Oh,
like the movie
see.
sat on a shelf for years and they weren't sure what to do with it. And then they went and reshot this framing device with Aston, and he's clearly aged at least like 2 or 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I think it works. I think it's like Deliverance for kids, which is a weird thing to say because there couldn't be a movie less appropriate for children than Deliverance.
Well,
but it's
and
kind
I
of.
don't think it gets quite as dark as that.
Well, no, of course not. But
No.
that's what I mean by for kids. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a lighter, less scary version of that horrible camping trip gone really, really wrong.
I mean, I remember it getting unsettling, and I remember it not getting as dark as I thought it was going to get. And I don't know. I guess I don't remember it terribly well, but it was an interesting movie. This is a movie I've only seen once, but I think it deserves discussion. Near Dark.
Yeah.
Catherine Bigelow,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
I wish I remembered it better. I need to see it again.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic vampire movie.
I remember really liking it, and it's very stylish, and vampires, Catherine Bigelow.
I forgot to do rewindable moments, but I would list, there's a scene in that movie, the famous scene that every horror fan knows and loves is this scene where they go into this hillbilly bar,
Okay.
the group of vampires, and kind of taunt and torment the good old boys in this bar before finally killing them. And it's just this almost unbearably tense, long, like 10, 12-minute sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. She's a great filmmaker.
Paxton is, especially Bill Paxton. It's one of his best performances. He's scary in it.
We need to watch that again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had that. What else did I have here? Hiding Out.
I love Hiding Out.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it too, actually.
I mean, it's dumb. It's another one. I'm not sure how good it actually is. Like so many of the movies we talk about on this podcast, I don't have a lot of perspective on because I loved them so much as a kid and I watched them so many times and they remind me of, being a kid. And so I love them, but I love Hiding Out. It's a comedy thriller where John Cryer plays a guy who is basically witness to some bad mafia activity and he goes into protective custody, but the cops who are protecting him are killed. And so he escapes on his own and he hides out by going back into high school, disguising himself as a high school kid, which of course is what you would do.
It's a very 80s thing to do in a movie.
80s, very 80s.
And has its perhaps issues. But I came to this movie late and I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I really liked it. But yeah, you might have some other hidden gems.
I do. So Adventures in Babysitting.
Oh yeah.
Which I think nobody saw when it came out, but is maybe kind of liked more now than it was then.
What's so funny is I actually put that up in Key Films because I think this might be that HBO or cable effect. All my friends talked about Adventures in Babysitting like all the time. And movies like that. So I guess I think of it as Key, but
I'm pretty sure it tanked, but it doesn't matter because it found its audience. It did find its audience. It's a great movie.
Yeah. I remember my friends used to watch it on TV all the time.
Yeah. Super fun movie. 3 O'Clock High.
Yep.
Which is another great teen movie. Directorial debut of Phil Joannou, who made that movie like he was only ever going to be allowed to make one movie in his career. Like it's full of every camera trick and like crazy. It's just, it plays like a movie by a guy who's just out of film school.
Oh, wow.
But to its detriment to some degree, but it's super fun. It's a super fun movie about a kid who upsets a bully who says he's going to beat him up at 3 o'clock when the bell rings. And this kid spends the whole day trying to get out of this fight. It's just super fun. Great teen movie. Amazon Women on the Moon.
Oh.
John Landis's send up of late night TV. So all the bad infomercials and sitcoms and old horror films and old sci-fi movies from the 50s that he loves so much. It's the spoof. It's it's like 85 minutes, and not every, it's a sketch movie, essentially, and not every sketch works, but it moves so fast that if you hit a dud, like it'll be over in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
and its hit to dud ratio is really good. I would say, and I quote it all the time. I think it's a really funny movie full of great stuff. House of Games, which was Roger Ebert's one of his favorite movies. It's a David Mamet thriller about con artists, starring Joe Mantegna and Mamet's wife, Lindsay Krause.
I do know this movie.
It was his wife at the time, I should say.
Yeah, I know this movie.
That is a really great, twisty, totally Mamet movie about con artists, and it's good. It's worth seeing.
It is good.
There's a kids movie that nobody knows called Ruskies, which is it's very 80s because it's about a Russian sailor who's in a submarine off the coast of Florida, and he gets separated from his crew and washes up on the shore, and he's found by a bunch of little boys who were exactly like me at this age. They love G.I. Joe, and they love playing war, and they have like toy grenades and toy machine guns. They're obsessed with G.I. Joe, essentially, and they find him. And they think he's the enemy because he's a Russian sailor, and they come to become friends. It's really corny, but it's utterly adorable. Joaquin Phoenix plays the lead kid back when he was still known as Leaf.
Yep.
And Peter Billingsley from Christmas Story is his sidekick.
Wow.
I don't know how good it is, but it's really cute.
Yeah.
If you have like little boys that like playing like war,
that kind of thing.
It's a great movie to show them. And then finally, one of my favorite movies of this year, and one of my favorite movies of the decade, really, is I think, criminally underrated. Although it was a hit at the time and got good reviews.
Okay.
I don't know why this movie is not held up and talked about and watched more.
Okay.
Which is a movie called Stakeout.
Oh, God. Why didn't I say Stakeout yet? Stakeout is so good. Stakeout's one of my favorites.
I love Stakeout. It is a phenomenal thriller. If you saw it back then and you have forgotten it, watch it again.
It's so
if you've
good.
never seen it, then watch it. It's just a great action comedy.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's Richard Dreyfuss, Emilio
Richard
Estevez.
Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez as cops who are on a stakeout, and things get twisty and turny, and they get in over their heads, and it's very funny. The comedy works, the suspense works,
the action works.
The action sequences work really great.
Yeah, another good sense of place movie.
Yep, good. It's set in Seattle.
And it gives you a really good sense
you really
of
feel
it.
like you're there.
Yeah, I love that movie. It's great.
It's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a few B movies. Did you have any B movies that you want to spotlight?
I'm sure I do. I mean, I don't know. You go first.
Okay. The Hidden.
Oh, I don't know that one.
I don't know if you've seen this. It's Kyle MacLachlan plays this kind of alien police officer who comes to Earth pursuing this alien that looks like a giant worm that hides inside of people. And when it wears out the body of a human that it's using, like when that body gets close to dead or destroyed, it goes into another body.
It sounds weirdly familiar, but maybe that's just because
Kyle MacLachlan teams up with Michael Nouri from Twin Peaks.
Okay.
He played Harry Truman, Twin Peaks, who's a cop. And they chase this thing around L.A.
I mean, this kind of sounds like Twin Peaks.
Yeah, it's kind of, but it's weird. It's a very low budget, kind of a sleazy thriller.
Oh, okay.
Like he gets in a stripper at one point, the alien.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's really like, it's a movie that like does a lot with its budget. Jack Shoulder directed it.
Okay.
He was a good director who made a lot of like kind of low budget genre stuff. Most famous for Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which is the LGBT entry of Nightmare on Elm Street. But he made a bunch of like good horror movies and kind of sci-fi and stuff like that from this era.
I feel like who else would you cast as an alien cop than Kyle MacLachlan?
He just has to act like normal.
Yeah.
Prince of Darkness, which is a really cheesy John Carpenter. Like it's meant to be kind of like a exploration of the relationship between science and religion, but it's not really. It's just this big, dopey, special effectsy
I kind of like this
horror
movie.
movie.
Is that weird?
I love it. I mean, I put it on my list. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
It's a
I have
great
it
B
too.
movie.
Yeah.
It's not good
No.
exactly in the traditional sense, but you're not going to be bored. It's
I find
really
it
fun.
pretty creepy. Like I find it.
Well, that's just the
pretty
thing.
creepy.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
moments of it work as pure horror, but then
Yeah.
it's undercut by moments that are so dumb.
The thing that sticks with
It's
me.
the scene where it's the movie that has the scene where a character sees something and he labels it caca. He goes, "Oh, that's caca."
That's right. That's this.
And then there's a
movie.
beat. And then under his breath, he says it again. Caca.
This is kind of in the garbage
Yeah.
day territory a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's pretty bad.
Isn't Alice Cooper in this
Yep.
movie?
Alice Cooper plays
Yeah.
a homeless guy who gets possessed by Satan.
Yeah. The things I remember being, there was like a couple of sequences. I think it's where one of the characters is having a dream, but it looks like kind of creepy VHS footage.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's
Those are
well
really,
done.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
creepy to me.
Yeah. I mean, Carpenter's great.
He's effective. He knows
His
what he's
problem,
doing.
I think, is that he's a better director than he is a screenwriter.
Oh, okay.
And I say this also telling you he's one of my favorite filmmakers of all
He's-
time.
he's
I love
amazing.
his movies.
Yeah, they're really good.
But I think he's better as a director than he is as a writer. And he wrote Prince of Darkness. I think maybe under a pseudonym, but
Oh, okay.
he wrote it. Weird fun fact. One of my colleagues at the film school where I teach suffers quite a death in Prince of
Oh,
Darkness.
gosh, that's right.
Yeah, he gets like stabbed by a bicycle.
Oh, right.
In fact, Alice Cooper kills him.
I mean, that's
Can you imagine?
some pretty good street cred right there.
I mean, this
That's
guy
not
I
bad.
work with has a great. He had a great career as an actor and a writer, and yet the thing, whenever I see him, I'm always like, "You got killed by Alice Cooper,"
And he's like,
Prince
"Yeah,
of Darkness,
yeah."
that's like the coolest thing I know about.
I mean, I think that's some major street cred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple more. Summer School, Carl Reiner's dumb teen comedy where
Yeah.
Mark Harmon and
Harmon.
Kirstie Alley are forced to teach summer school with a bunch of crazy kids that just won't behave.
Sounds
and
like a
it's
Sunday
every
night movie
bit
to
as
me.
stupid as you
Yeah.
might think it would be, but
Yeah.
it totally works if you like those kinds of movies.
Those
it's a
were a
dumb
thing.
80s teen comedy.
Those were a thing in
Yeah.
the 80s,
It is
for
not
sure.
John Hughes. It's the other end of the spectrum. And yet it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Carl Reiner is a great comedy
Oh, yeah.
director.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Principal with James Belushi
I know
and
that's-
Louis Gossett Jr.
Yeah.
This was another mini genre of like the guy that would come in and clean up the school.
Yeah.
There was Lean on Me with which is a true story of Joe Clark. Morgan Freeman played him in the movie
Okay.
Lean
I
on
couldn't
Me.
remember who was in that. Yeah.
There was a movie called Stand and Deliver.
Yep.
With
Edward James
Olmos. It was a thing.
It was definitely a
The Principal
mini-genre.
is the like exploitation movie
Yeah.
version of that narrative. It's a little seedier and a little,
It's a scary. I remember it being kind of scary
yeah,
to me.
yeah, totally, yeah.
I
It's a
scare
good,
kinda easy,
it's a
but-
good thriller, and Belushi's good in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better than you would think it would be based on the
Based
premise.
on the premise. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, a movie that truly nobody knows. So this is like to the degree that like this podcast might occasionally introduce you to things you haven't heard of. Nobody's going to know this movie. It's called Nowhere to Hide.
Oh, okay.
It's a B movie thriller with Amy Madigan, the great Amy Madigan of probably most famous for Field of Dreams and for being Ed Harris's wife. But
Also in Streets of Fire.
Streets of Fire, yeah, we know her from Streets of
So
Fire,
good.
which she's so good in. And she plays the lead, and it's an action movie where her husband is, she's military. Her husband is military. He stumbles on some stuff he shouldn't know, and he's murdered. And she has to go on the run with her kid, and she ends up. So she's trying to evade these government goons that are trying to kill her, and she's very smart about it and uses all the skills that she's learned in the military and ends up going up into the mountains to find the only guy that she thinks could help her, which is her husband's old combat buddy, who's a guy played by Michael Ironside.
Oh,
And it turns into this big action thing up in the mountains with Amy Madigan kicking ass and Michael
Wow.
Ironside helping her. And Yeah, nobody knows about it, but
Cool.
it's a solid little B movie for sure.
Sounds pretty good. Yeah.
What about So Bad It's Good?
Oh boy. Jaws 4.
Jaws.
I don't know
4.
if that's. Can you say it's good? I don't know. It seemed
I think it's good.
It seemed worth mentioning.
I mean, it's
good,
terrible,
yeah.
but it's good.
So bad it's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the movie where Michael Caine climbs out of the ocean onto a boat and his shirt is dry.
Yeah. He missed the Oscars to shoot this movie.
It is. Yeah. This is the movie he
recall.
missed. He won for Hannah and Her Sisters, and he wasn't there because he was off shooting Jaws 4. I think this is the movie also. He had a famous quote. Somebody asked him what he thought of it, and he said, I never saw it, but I've seen the house that it bought, and it's lovely.
He's pretty famous for...
He'll take a check.
Yeah. And he probably wasn't a bad place to shoot either, down in wherever they shot this. I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere in the Caribbean.
Yeah. So I remember it being kind of fun, but not good.
Yeah.
And Michael Caine being in it.
Yeah. It somehow proposes the idea that it's the shark in it is after the Brody family because the shark is related to the sharks they killed in the earlier Jaws.
That's the revenge
movies.
portion.
It's the revenge. But the idea that the shark would be like, I'm going to find these people. And so it kills one of the Brodies up in Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
And then Amity Island.
All right.
And then it goes down to Florida.
That's right. It goes
to find the other Brodies. Yeah, it's
wild. It's
so
real
bad.
wild.
Yeah.
But hey.
I
had Teen Wolf 2, which I don't know if it's
God.
good, but it's maybe worth a mention.
I'm not sure it is. But yeah.
Well, just because Jason Bateman.
Have you seen it though?
A long time ago, once.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't watch it now.
Yeah. The only thing I remember about it, I think I saw it in the theater. The only thing I remember about it is it has a whole 80s musical montage, like so many movies did, of just him studying.
Yeah.
It's just shots of him in different positions in his dorm room reading a book. And even at the time as a little kid, I remember thinking, this is a really uneventful musical montage.
Well, if you listen to Smartless and you hear them ribbing Jason Bateman all the time about this movie,
a lot of guff for
it's
Teen
worth
Wolf too.
knowing that it exists because it's something that he still gets.
He owns it.
He totally
great.
owns it, and he still gets grief for it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen this version or not. Flowers in the Attic. I don't know that it's good either, but it's worth a mention for that. That was big.
No, it's really
80s.
Bad, but it is I would put it under So Bad It's Good.
Yeah.
It's trashy fun.
It's super trashy. And
Christy Swanson is the girl.
Was she in it?
And Grandma is Louise Fletcher.
Oh, good boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was so big with teen girls in the 80s was that VC Andrews.
Oh my God. Every girl in my class
super
had
trashy,
that paperback. I can picture, I never read it, but I can picture the cover of the paperback. It had a cutout window.
Yeah, all of the
cover.
VC Andrews had this cutout window.
Yeah.
They had a very similar aesthetic. You should go look it up. It's kind of a fun paperback aesthetic that all the VC Andrews had.
Did you read it?
I did. And I've read of quite a few other VC Andrews.
Aren't they all
incest related?
Yeah, incest related.
Yeah,
what a weird.
It's
isn't
weird.
That such a weird thing to become a phenomenon among teen girls.
It's real weird. I can't explain it to you at all, but it was big. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I had a few in this category.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, which unlike the first one, which I will defend as an actual good movie, it's really bad. It's them in Florida on spring break or something.
Right.
Overboard with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, which was enough of a hit, I guess, to warrant a remake because they remade it some years later with Anna Faris.
That's right, they did.
North Shore, which is a teen surfing movie.
Oh,
I think it's Tia Carrere is the girl and Matt
Okay.
Adler is the kid.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not good, but it's fun. And then The Piece de Resistance, the movie that I think maybe it's too good to put under So Bad It's Good, but I don't know. The Running Man.
I wondered if you were going to talk about Running Man. Yeah.
I love Running Man.
Yeah,
I saw it a
know.
million times as a kid. Mm-hmm. It's based on a Stephen King book that it has absolutely nothing in common with, other than maybe the smallest hint of a premise. But it's Arnold at the peak of his Arnoldness when he had a one-liner for
Yep.
every guy that he dispatched.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I don't know what to say about it. It's really fun and really dumb.
I remember enjoying it, but it's been a long time since
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen it. Yeah.
All right, cool. Do you want to take us through the Oscars and the box office
Sure.
for 1987?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So for the Oscars,
Quiz me.
Do you want to do Oscars or?
Yeah, I
okay.
think Best Picture was Last Emperor.
That is correct.
Actor was Michael Douglas.
4.
Oh, Wall Street.
Correct.
Actress was Cher.
Correct.
For Moonstruck.
Yeah.
I have no idea who the supporting actor was.
The supporting actor was Sean Connery in The Untouchables.
Oh, of course it was. Yeah,
it sounded
Connery
like-
for
yeah.
Untouchables, the Irishman with the Scottish accent.
You know.
Supporting actress, is that Olympia Dukakis?
4.
Yeah, for Moonstruck.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
Was director, was that Bertolucci? Is it for Last Emperor?
It was Bertolucci for The Last Emperor.
And was the song the Dirty Dancing song?
Which song do you think it was?
Well, it's not She Breaks the Wind.
No.
The Time of My
Yeah,
Life or
I've
whatever.
Had the Time of My Life by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warren.
Yeah.
And those were the Oscars of 1987.
I did pretty well there.
You did great. You
Yeah.
pretty much got it all the
Yeah.
way. Highest grossing films of 87. We'll start with number 10, The Witches of Eastwick, which you mentioned was real big.
Yep.
9, Lethal Weapon.
Yep.
8, Stakeout. Fantastic movie. 7, The Secret of My Success. 6, The Untouchables. 5, Moonstruck. 4, Good Morning Vietnam. 3, Beverly Hills Cop 2. 2, Fatal Attraction. And 1, Three Men and a Baby.
Really?
That's what it says here. That shocked me.
Yeah.
Could that be real? Or do we have an incorrect
It was a
fact
big
here?
hit. I mean, they made a sequel.
But was it that big a hit? I mean, was it literally the number one
don't
grossing
know.
film of that year?
I remember seeing it in a theater, and I remember that theater being
wild.
absolutely packed and people loving it. And me sitting there as a kid going, I don't think this is that funny. But anyway, yeah, it was a big deal at the time.
I mean, I remember it being a big deal. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't realize it was literally the number one grossing film of the year.
Yeah, that's wild. I feel like it has had less staying power than almost any other movie you mentioned from that top 10.
All the other ones, most of the other ones are worth rewatching, in my opinion, but I don't know about that one.
Yeah, nobody's rewatching 3 Men and a Baby.
No.
All right, cool. Well, let's do our top 10s.
Okay.
Did you do a top 10?
I did indeed.
We should mention that we both forgot to do the rewindable moments, but that's okay.
Well,
Because
I
this
mean, I could
episode's
s-
running
yeah.
long anyway.
Yeah, I could take you through some, but we actually mentioned quite a few of them
we're
already.
We're running long, so
Okay.
we'll just
We won't
we'll
do
go
that.
to our top 10.
Just go watch Dirty
wrap it
Dancing
up.
and The Lost Boys. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sweaty, oiled up, saxophone playing, mullet wearing guys in tight pants.
that's definitely one thing to go rewatch, I suppose.
That's your rewindable moment.
Okay, I had, and remember these top 10s are like just things that we love. It's not, a quality assessment necessarily.
Yeah, they're like it's some weird hybrid between.
I mean, there's
your,
quality in
your
here, don't get me
favorite
wrong,
movie
yeah.
and the movie you think is actually the best, but like, yeah,
And a lot of times
it would be a different list if we were just listing movies that we thought were the best made movies of that
it
year.
would be. And I think
Like The Last Emperor, I can say with some assurance is not going to be on either one of our.
I've just
list.
never seen it, so I can't even speak to it. But yeah.
But what I'm saying. It's
I do.
they're not
Yeah. It's
we're
not
not
right.
setting out to say what we thought the best prestige
actual
movies were.
exactly.
It's our favorite movies.
So with that in mind, 10, Mannequin, 9.
That's why you saw. Okay, yeah, you saw Mannequin sitting at 10, and
I
you
was
were
like,
like,
look,
I better
I gotta
go back,
explain this.
even though we're all the way in 87, and we're in like what is this like our 14th episode
Yeah.
of doing this list.
Yeah, I know.
Or 7th episode, I guess. You're like, I better make sure people understand that
Well-
I don't think this is the objectively best
Well,
movie.
I mean, my criteria is often like, how often do I rewatch this thing, right?
Yeah, like which movie would I most want to put on?
Right.
Yeah.
So 10, Mannequin, 9, Adventures in Babysitting, 8, Stakeout, 7, Can't Buy Me Love, 6, The Monster Squad, 5, Moonstruck, 4, The Princess Bride, 3, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, 2, The Lost Boys, and 1, say it with me, Dirty Dancing. You all knew that was coming, though.
Did you have an honorable mention or anything?
I had lots of honorable
Okay.
mentions, like Lethal Weapon, Hollywood Shuffle, The Living Daylights, Hiding Out, Outrageous Fortune, Project X, Broadcast News, Near Dark, Inner Space, which we didn't talk about actually, but
yeah, Inner Space is very cute.
It's a fun movie. Spaceballs. I don't know.
Yep. Inner Spaceballs.
Well, they both have.
The
exactly.
mashup.
They both. That's kind of how I made that honorable mentions.
All right, here's my top 10. Number 10 is Predator. Number 9 is Lethal Weapon. A couple of Shane Blacks there back to back.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 8, The Lost Boys. Number 7, Fatal Attraction. Number 6, The Monster Squad. Same place you had it.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Number 5, Stakeout. Number 4, The Untouchables. Number 3, RoboCop. Number 2, Hollywood Shuffle. And number 1, comfortably, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
We had kind of very unusually different lists.
Yeah. Here's my honorable mention, though.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of movies that you had in your top 10.
No
Dirty
doubt.
Dancing, Princess Bride, Moonstruck, Good Morning Vietnam, Wall Street, Adventures in Babysitting, Hiding Out, 3 O'Clock High, Nowhere to Hide, Angel Heart, and Street Smart.
Yeah.
And then I made a list that I called the Guilty Pleasure list.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Mannequin, Over the Top, Masters of the Universe, The Principal, The Running Man, Whitewater Summer, and Can't Buy Me Love.
If I may say, these are movies that do make their way onto our screen fairly often.
Yeah, I'm more likely
Those guilty
I'm
pleasures.
probably more likely to
Yeah.
throw on any of those from the Guilty Pleasure list than I am anything I just mentioned in my top 10 because they're just like, it's like, it's like we're adults and it's like, let's have candy tonight.
Yeah, because we
like,
can.
It's
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
impulse you have every once in a
Yeah.
while as an adult to like have candy for dinner or something. You know, that's how I feel like, we could watch that new Prestige series on Netflix that everybody says is so great. Or we could just put in Mannequin again.
That's how we roll around here.
All right. Do you have any wrap-up thoughts? Are we done?
No, I think we're done.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for sticking with us. We realize this is a longer episode, but hey,
long.
87. What a great year for movies. Yeah, for sure. So we'll see you in 1988.
See you then.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Long Rewind. The program is produced by Dustin Morrow and hosted by me, Lisa Molinelli. If you enjoy the show, please consider hitting the subscribe button, leave us a good review on your podcast app, and tell your friends about the program. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.